Hey yo guys, what's up and welcome back to Two Toe Tags and Metal Reviews, and today we're getting our final review of Sunholy by Shade Empire. So, Shade Empire is kind of a random choice of an album to do, but it was...
I suppose, but it was the one that we both felt like would be most worth us both covering throughout the week.
From our first impressions last week.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm the only one who really, had some history with the band, because it's like a pretty new band for you.
I mean, yeah, I never listened to them before, so
before.
this was kind of my intro to them. So yeah, I spent the majority of the week listening to it, and then you did recommend Omega Arcane.
Yeah,
that was to check out. So I did go back and listen to that, and we can have thoughts about that a little after. Just wanted to get that out there that I do have another point of reference.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, this album I find was very eclectic. There's a lot of different things going on here, and that's it's something that I'm always looking for. I think we're both always looking for things that stand out and bands that are going the extra mile, and diversity of sound, diversity of style is something that we always look for when we're reviewing albums. I think this album has a lot of that. So it kicks off with In Amongst the Woods. It opens with a 10-second primal scream. Like it's not the most in your face thing. It's not exactly subtle. It's kind of just there. I wish it was more in your face. I wish they kind of emphasized it a little more because it's pretty cool. Then you get like basically a symphonic black metal song, but with like clean vocals, which is kind of a weird kind of pairing, if you would say that. There's some synthy stuff that happens too towards the end of the song. There's a chanting section we both thought would sound like the chant from Gojira.
Yeah.
Right? There's that part that happens. But overall, it's a pretty good song. Then you get into The Apostle. To me, this sounds more like closer to power metal. It's not power metal, but it's closer to power metal. And I mentioned before that it's reminded me of Sonata Arctica. I still feel that way. Overall, this album at least, reminded me of so many other bands. Sonata Arctica, Opeth, Dimmu Borgir, Flesh God Apocalypse, Septic Flesh, like all these bands that I like, and it's like little elements of all their styles all rolled into this one package on this album.
So it wasn't to a fault at all.
No, not to a fault at all. If anything, I know
cases where it can be.
There's cases where it can be, where you feel like they're ripping off other bands. I didn't quite feel that way. So I'll give you an example. So we talked about the Shagrath voice, right? There's other bands that do what we call the Shagrath voice, right? Should we even credit Shagrath for this voice? I guess he's the guy that does it, I guess. So the thing is, it's done like here and there. There's no whole songs that are sung like that, right?
Yeah, it's just another color.
It's another color. Exactly. That's a good way to put it. So when you have this singer, and I also question how many vocalists are in this band, whether it's one, or they have backup singers, or what. I'm not exactly sure. But the vocals on this album are very diverse. There's a lot of different vocal ranges. There's various types of clean vocals. There's various types of harsh vocals. And there's also female vocal on one of the songs, which is track number 3, This Coffin and Island. Coffee's not an island. I don't even like coffee. This Coffin and Island featuring Aku Kalari, who's the saxophonist that appears on this album twice. Probably one of the highlight tracks for me, to be honest. It's a track that kept standing out to me. The saxophone is just so juicy, so fresh. Again, we hear saxophone on other metal albums. It's becoming kind of a more popular thing these days, and I kind of like it every time I hear it.
It's like yes and no, because it's like we're hearing it more, but it's still not common. Like we hear it like
relatively.
Relatively. We usually hear it once in a while.
Once in a while, but compare that to 5 or 6 years ago.
That's
you
true,
didn't hear it at all, right?
You didn't hear it much at all.
So it's relatively more popular than it used to be. This is one of the songs, track 3 I'm still on. It has some Opeth vibes to it. I feel like it's got the prominent synth in the intro. That's another thing that makes it stand out. But yeah, the saxophone is like a little jazzy bit. It's got a female vocal on it, and I thought that was cool. I tried to look for a credit, couldn't find one. I don't know if it's a guest singer or one of the band members sounded like a woman. I don't know. Maybe there's a woman in the band. I just don't know who it is. But another cool thing about it is near the end of the song, there's these harsh screams. Actually, it's not even the end. I think it might be like considered the chorus maybe, but harsh screams over the synth riff, that I thought was a really cool combination, really cool like mixture of sounds that were kind of gelling really well together. Just a lot of ideas kind of being compounded and working. Maroon was a cool song. That's another Opeth vibing song for me. Sunholy, Flesh God Apocalypse on this one, like very striking synth sounds, like very striking string section, like almost something you'd hear. Well, Flesh God Apocalypse, like why even trying to explain? Super fast drumming. This one's got a lower harsh vocal than other songs, which goes back to what I said about there being a variety of different styles. Profane Radiance, track number 8, starts off very ambient, right? It lasts for almost 2 minutes, then the song kicks into a blast beat, right? Then you got harmonized clean and harsh vocals harmonizing. Just lots of cool stuff there. What else? I mean, I got notes for pretty much all the songs. Rite of Passage, so that's the last track. Really cool bridge sections, some cool tremolo picked grooves. Really mesmerizing leads that lead into like this cool little solo. Has a little bit of flair on it before the vocals kick back in. There's a lot of little cool ideas happening everywhere, which I really appreciate. These are always the kind of things I'm always looking for when I'm reviewing albums. Some nice vocal harmonies, vocal leads. At the end, he hits some nice notes. I don't know what they are, but there was a lot of really cool stuff going for this album, I think. A lot of interesting things to point out and interesting things to enjoy.
Yeah, it's definitely an album where it has a lot of moments that stand out and get you thinking, oh wow, that was pretty cool, like over and over. The synth vibe, here's another one you didn't mention. The way that they use synthesizer reminds me of Ishan. It was reminding me a lot of how I felt, like the sounds of Ammer. And like that, because I was thinking to myself, like, okay, this synth, I've heard the synth be like this before, but I'm not sure where. And then it popped in my head, Ishan did that. So that was a cool vibe I got there. And I like the character that the synth adds to this album, you know? And I like the way that it was used, and I thought that was pretty cool. And what was interesting about this album, and I was kind of finding my experience with this similar to yours with A Sign of Things to Come by Silosis. Okay. I would put this album on and I tried to focus and really, really get into it, and then I just kept losing focus. But there are still songs that stood out. This Coffin and Island is one of them. The grooves are nice. The sax is good every single time it comes up. I enjoyed that song. There were these glitchy sounds that happen in the chorus of the title track. I thought that was cool, and overall that song was cool. Torn Asunder has a really nice keyboard part, but that's also the song where they swing, and that would always stand out to me. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the part where they're swinging. Cool. But I think a song like Maroon, even though I said last week, oh wow, this is a great way to kick off the second half of the album, it starts off that way and then kind of cools down. And I feel like this album needs more kind of barn burner, hard hitting songs to compensate for the lighter stuff. Like just straightforward, like, okay, have this one song just rip through, and then you'll feel like you're more ready for the chill stuff.
Overall, the album feels pretty tame. Like overall, it's a pretty tame sounding album.
But there are moments that sound more vicious, and I feel like they could have maybe done a little bit more with that to create a bit more of a balance, so that each section feels like there's a lot of weight to it. So when you hear the heavy parts, you're like, whoa, yeah. And then when you're done with the heavy parts, oh, wow, cool, the soft part's really pretty. But there's not as much of a balance there. But I was also kind of thinking to myself, like, okay, after the first, 3 songs, I feel like I've heard just about everything this album has to offer. You get the hard stuff, you get the keyboard, the synth, you get the saxophone, you kind of get, the full package in those first 3 songs. Not to say everything after that is bad per se. It just kind of feels like
the 4th song is probably one of the heaviest songs. So you don't quite get the really heavy stuff until the 4th song hits.
I'd say The Apostle is probably.
But that's
a deal of heavy.
You do, but that's the Sonata Arctica song to me. That's more of a power metal vibe. It's got kind of a hybrid between Dimmu Borgir and Sonata Arctica. Besides, I don't think I mentioned Dimmu Borgir in my band comparison list.
Oh, you did.
Did I? Okay.
You did. But yeah. It was a weird feeling, but I just kept finding myself losing some focus with this album, but I still liked it, and I still found moments to point out that were cool. Now, Omega Arcane is the album where I heard of this band. It was 10 years ago. they dropped it, and it's been a long time since I heard it, so I put it on for a comparison, and it sounds completely different. Like, it's interesting. I will say I liked that album better, yes. I felt that it was able to tell an overarching musical story a bit better, and it was just crazy, the brutal stuff, the beautiful stuff. But you know what? This album does a lot of different stuff, and I commend it for that. Omega Arcane does not have clean vocals. It does not have synthesizer the way that this album does. It doesn't swing like in Torn Asunder. So I like that this album is a development for this band. Yeah, I did. You know, if it was a copy paste of Omega Arcane, I probably would have loved this album. But if I listened back to Omega Arcane, I would have been like, oh, it's just kind of the same thing. So the fact that this is different, I actually like a lot, even though I overall enjoy Omega Arcane more.
That's the thing. It's a commendable trait to for a band to experiment and do different things and evolve their sound.
They evolve.
But as listeners, as the audience, I would agree with you. Omega Arcane is a better album. I enjoyed that more when I went back to listen to it. I went, holy crap, this is really cool stuff. Maybe it's because it is more linear in its sound, and it's just a little bit more like you know what you're getting into. There's no surprises. So when you're listening to it, it's like if you're in the mood for this sound, that's what you're getting for the 50 minutes or whatever, or the hour long that it is.
Yeah, it's kind of long. And I think that goes to a degree. You know, I feel like that album really, it goes hard between those two ends of the spectrum. You get the really heavy stuff in there, but you get really nice, beautiful stuff with like the orchestral sounds and all that, and piano as well.
Without clean vocals and stuff like that.
There's no cleans, but I feel like they're able to kind of fill that void with the way that they carry their melodies that way. So it's like they accomplish that, they just do it in a different way.
Fair point. So yeah, I don't know. I have other notes, but I think I've kind of said everything I really need to say.
Yeah, no, I'd say now is a good time to rate this album. So what do you give it?
This one is not easy. I know I've sat here and kind of praised it the whole time, but the thing is, so when I'm reviewing albums and I'm looking for a score and I'm trying to gauge whether it's a toe tag album or not a toe tag album, or where on the score spectrum it fits. A toe tag album is something that has diversity of sound, has diversity of vocals, it has fresh ideas, it has different elements, a good usage of other instruments and things like this. Stop looking at me like that, you weirdo. That's awkward. So a toe tag album has all that stuff. It has a special spark. It has replayability, right? It has like a draw to it. This album, Sunholy, ticks so many of those boxes, but for some reason that I can't figure out, it's lacking the spark. It's lacking that special sauce that makes me feel like this is you have to listen to this album, you must check it out. I don't feel that way about this. I feel like with everything that this album does, it still at the end of the day comes across as an average album, right? It's doing a lot of stuff, but it's doing it all in the most basic forms. So I think it's solid. I think it's got a lot going for it. I think most people would probably enjoy it. It's gonna get a 7.5 for me, but it's missing the spark to be able to be called a toe tag album. So super good though, super good.
You make a really good point about variety. This album has so much of that. This is like the kind of album that has a ton of different stuff that is exciting. All this different stuff going on. Oh, let's bring out that. Oh, they start swinging here. Oh, there's saxophone there. But for me too, it also didn't really have that spark. But on top of that, I kept losing focus. And it's hard to explain sometimes. And that's just what happens when you're a music listener. Sometimes it just isn't hitting.
Yeah.
So with this album, I loved all the stuff they've done here. I love that the fact that they've evolved as a band. This is a different singer than Omega Arcane, by the way.
Oh, didn't know that.
Different singer on that album and this album. So there's a lot of cool stuff here. But overall, I kept just kind of thinking to myself, yeah, this is a good album. I couldn't really say much more than that. So for me, it's going to get a 6.
Well, that's a pretty good score still, a 6 from TV Fish,
no,
a 7.5 from myself. But we want to hear from you guys and let us know what you guys think of Sunholy after a week of listening to it. And also sound off down below and let us know what you guys think of other albums from Shade Empire. Or maybe you guys are just hearing about this band for the first time like I did. Anyways, sound off down below. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm Vile Self.
I'm TV Fish.
We'll see you guys on the next one.